honestly don't find language to be that much of a barrier, even though we moved abroad, which I feel like is not something that I hear a lot of people say on this journey. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it because a lot of my friends, when they knew we were moving to this region in Latin America, were like, girl, do you know Spanish? Like, how are you gonna communicate? How are you gonna get by? How are you gonna get around? How are you gonna do things? And the truth is, I do have a foundation in Spanish. So you might be like, oh, that's easy for you to say you have a foundation in Spanish. However, comma, not I'm not fluent. I'm conversational at best. And yet I'm here and we're getting real things done in real time. So today I want to talk to you guys about how I do that, how I perceive language barrier when we moved abroad and even other places that we explore when I don't have a foundation of the language, what perspective and approach I take, what actual resources I use, what things that I actually do in order to help me get fluent and more fluent in the language, and what my husband and I do, because while we both took Spanish in school, I know more Spanish than he does right now. And he will just kind of look at me like somebody will say something to him and he's like, and I'm over here and I have to kind of jump in and I might be doing something else. I might not be paying attention, but I'm like, okay, I need to jump in and pay attention so that I can, help us navigate this situation in terms of communication. So, yeah, I think my perspective is a layered one and it's one that I don't hear often. So I want to share with y'all. I saw this video a while ago. It was a like produced video, but it had a point. It was two friends, one for whom English was a second language, Spanish was her first language, and another one for whom obviously English was her first language, and this was their friends. So the one whose ESL said something, and she said something incorrect in English. And so the other friend kind of laughed, not in a mean way, but kind of like, so and so, whatever her name was, let's say Sandy. Sandy, it's X, not Y, and kind of laughed and did that thing that people sometimes do. And you could see her whole everything drop. And I was like, oh, what she's about to say, because she's not laughing at this. And she was like, you know how difficult it is for me to show who I am in English? She was like, do you know how smart and funny and interesting I am in my native language? And I'm just trying to get it through. You get through when it comes to the English language. And I was like, that stuck with me because we do wordplay. I do. I'm an English major. Like, wordplay is fun. We can be sarcastic. We can be a little witty. We can, have little jokes. You can be interesting and funny. You can talk about all these intellectual things in your native language. And yet doing that and finding the vocabulary for it in a language that's not your native language, maybe you just dabble, maybe it's a second language that you're working on, like Spanish is for me, it can be challenging to fully express yourself in in that way, through language, through that kind of communication, because I can't have the same, you know, deep conversations in Spanish that I would in English. I just don't have the vocabulary for that at this moment. And that's a whole other thing. I'm working on just like everyday conversational life functioning vocabulary. So yeah, I that definitely stuck with me. And while I was here, right, and while I was here, I went to see a documentary with a friend. And what was interesting is that, yeah, it's true. I believe that that's true. You can't always express yourself in that way in your second language or your third language as much as you can in your native language. And there's so many other ways that we express ourselves. This is my perspective. This is my approach that transcend that language barrier, right? Like music and the feeling that you get from music, no matter what language it's in. Understanding, right? Because of body language, because of facial expression, you can kind of feel someone's energy or passion through that. Kindness transcends, right? People have been very kind here as I'm trying to figure it out. And I've learned to say, hey, I speak a little Spanish. I'm conversational, but I'm going to try. I'm learning all of that kind of in the beginning. So they kind of take that into account when we're having conversation, especially when it's something that we have to actually get done for real. Like we had to get a local phone, we have to go to the bank, we're talking to like that's you gotta work with me and speak a little bit slower, your pacing a little bit different. So yeah, I this is it's true, it's real. But my approach is there are still things that transcend that. So like I said, I went to this documentary with a friend. The documentary is in Spanish with English subtitles. Cool. There's a panel discussion after the documentary is over. There's three women and a narrator fully in Spanish. Now the friend that I'm with is bilingual and I am not, right? Because we're talking about deep stuff. This documentary was about the Darien Gap. And these three women are talking, the moderators asking them questions. And the first woman, she's from New York originally. And her pacing and how she's speaking, I can I almost like get about 75% of what she's saying, which is like, okay, I'm here, I'm with it. I really have to concentrate and pay attention and give eye contact and not be distracted. But I'm like 75%, I'm getting it. The second woman, I got maybe 30% of what she was saying because her pacing and her cadence was different. The third woman, who was the creator, I got a word here or there. Her voice was very low and she was very in her mouth as she was speaking, and so I didn't hear a lot. It felt very much like everything was running together. I hardly got any of that. But, and I shared this with my friend because she was kind of telling me a little bit, giving me some context in the spaces that she could. And, and I was telling her, I said, yeah, I got the gist and I got the basics of what they were talking about. And I can feel their energy. I can feel their passion. I heard the word la comunidad. I heard the words that expressed their love for community and why they were doing this. I heard a lot of the context, even where I couldn't understand the language. And so my approach to that was just to sit and not be like, oh, I can't understand what these people are saying. I'm sitting here like, people are nodding. Somebody laughed. I didn't get the joke. But then sometimes I would get the joke. And I am sincerely laughing at what they're saying because there's a pocket that I did get, because I understood a nuance, because they showed it also in their body language and their facial expressions and in their passion, because those things transcend. And so my perspective on it is like, yeah, it's difficult sometimes. And there's so many other ways that we can communicate and express when we're dealing with people, when we're dealing with other humans. And that's the approach that I take. And another thing for me that was really important was just leaning into that fact. I took Spanish in school. That's my foundation. And I took it a little bit longer than my husband, which is why I know a little bit more Spanish than he does. But I lean into like, this is all an opportunity for me to learn. This is what immersion looks like, instead of getting frustrated, because there's so many resources and tools that we can use to help us learn Spanish, right? To help us learn Thai, to help us learn French, or whatever the language is that you need, right? And so I have some things that I do. One thing is I speak Spanish on the regular. I have to, out here in Latin America, in Panama, I have to speak Spanish. Now look, you may have come across some creators. I've come across creators who said, hey, you just need a little bit, some basic. You don't really need to know a lot of Spanish to be able to be here and to function. And I'm not saying that's not true. So I'm speaking disclaimer from my experience. One thing that I will say and that I have learned is that there's some people who live in pockets, who move abroad and live in pockets with a lot of other foreigners, maybe from the US, Canada, and the UK. And a lot of the people around them do speak English, and the businesses that they're around within that bubble cater to that demographic. And a lot of them are bilingual as well, and they do speak English. Every day that I leave my house, because I'm not in that bubble, I'm just like in the city amongst kind of different groups of people. Every day that I've gone out, I've always encountered a situation where folks do not speak any English and it's only Spanish and I need to communicate something. Have I also encountered people that speak English? Of course. And when somebody's working on their English and they speak to me in English, one of the things I do, I speak back to them in Spanish. So it's an interesting dialogue because they're saying things to me in English and I'm hearing them and I'm understanding it. And then I'm responding to them in Spanish and they're understanding it and doing their thing with English and then responding to me in English, which I think is pretty cool because it could sound to observer that we're having two different conversations. Like, why are y'all speaking in two different languages? But it works. The times that I've done it, it has worked. So one thing that I do is I speak the language, I immerse. It's how we learn. Like my son can communicate to me. And it wasn't because we sat down and did phonics that he can communicate to me. He can communicate to me because he is picking it up from hearing us speak all the time. And that is what I'm doing. I'm hearing people speak all the time and I'm immersed in the language. I'm picking it up. I'm reading signs. I'm going places and I'm reading the advertisements. Everything that I come in contact with, I'm reading it, I'm listening. And for me, I'm the type where I have to actually see you. I can't be distracted if you're talking. So if you're talking in Spanish, I need to be paying attention to you really fully and concentrating so that I can get in and pick it up and understand. So I will admit that talking on the phone when someone's speaking to me in Spanish exclusively on the phone is way harder for me to process and to compute because I can't see the person. So that has been a challenge. It definitely has. And one thing that I'm working on is my ear. I'm listening more so that I can pick up on how things are said and how they flow. Yeah, working on those listening skills. Another thing that I do, I got it from a creator that I will link it down in the description, the video that helped me. She's a polyglot, so she speaks many languages, and she talked about having a language journal. So I have a language journal, y'all, and I have been slacking. Like the last week, I haven't written in my language journal, and I told myself that I was going to write in this thing every single day. But there's no English in this journal. So when I have a word, you can see, but I have a word that's highlighted and I learned a new word. I draw a picture next to it. Stick figures, they're usually pretty bad, but the rule is there's no English in this journal. It is only Spanish. So I just have bad pictures that hopefully let me know what something is when I learn a new word. So that has been really helpful because I'm writing like almost journal style about my day, about my thoughts in another language, and then I read it out loud. And I got that from another creator, which was great. And like I said, I'm going to link the video down below from her as well. I've also used italki. Again, this isn't sponsored, okay? But I'm just saying what I use. There are plenty of other apps where you can learn language. I found italki from somewhere. Some creator had mentioned it, and I was like, oh, let me try it because it was a language creator. So I was like, okay, can't be that bad if a language creator is recommending this. And I was like, oh, this is great. And so they have tutors that will talk to you in that language, and you can pick from particular region. So I can have a tutor that's from Panama, which is different than someone who's from Colombia or Chile or Peru. Like it's different because the dialect is different. Sometimes a few words are different. The cadence is different. The accent is different. And so kind of picking the accent where I am, kind of localizing that and learning how do they say it in Panama? What are the common phrases in Panama in particular, right? So those are some things that I do. And hubby and I help each other through it. Like we encourage each other. He really got into learning words for foods because the kitchen is his domain. He loves to cook. I love to eat. It's great. And he would make our food list, and instead of doing it in English, he's learning the Spanish words for a lot of the foods that we eat. And every time we get into an Uber or something where we have to give them a 4-digit PIN number, he's always telling them the number in Spanish. And so, in just encouraging him to do that, watching him like understand more, pick up a lot of the words, pick up a lot of what people are saying as he's being immersed here in Panama and immersed in Spanish language and kind of remembering some things from high school Spanish because he didn't take it out. He didn't take it in college like I did. So I took it a little bit longer and then just worked on it here and there in my young adulthood. And now I'm like fully immersed. And one thing that I hope that we can all take, right, is that sometimes you just have to be wrong and be okay with it. Like, and that's the hard part. Like you want like in the beginning, you want to sound like you do in your native language in the second language and not like a toddler learning a language. But that's kind of what we are. And we all remember that feeling of being kind of plopped into a situation. And we were plopped here and we're figuring it out. Because sometimes you're the new kid in school. Sometimes you're at their first day at a new job or at a new position. So we understand that feeling of like newness, of being plopped into a situation, having to navigate it and figure it out and train ourselves and learn the ropes and get comfortable. And to me, it's the same way with language. And I think a lot of times we overthink it. I think we overthink it, but really, I know we overthink it, present company included. And I actively work on my mindset around simplifying it, just do it. So yeah, I will speak Spanish and pull from the Spanish that I know. And sometimes I know it's wrong and I'm doing the best I can, but I can kind of figure out what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's broken, Spanglish, broken Spanish. Um, but that's just how I'm gonna learn. Like when my toddler will mess up a tense or something like that, and at some point you correct the toddler and they learn to say it at some point correctly. And that's the approach I'm taking with Spanish too, because you might be like, Imani, how do you know what you're writing in your journal is correct? And I do not. I'm doing the best that I can with it. And one day I'm like, I know that I'm going to learn to do it better. And that's just the process. And I think that's what we can glean from this, right? When we feel like, hey, we're a fish out of water, we're dealing with the big change, we're dealing with the shift in our lives that's pretty major, and we got to figure it out. Like something happened that changed the trajectory of where we're going or where we thought we were going, and we have to figure it out. And no matter what that change is for you or what that looks like, where you might feel a little fish out of water, where you might feel like there's a barrier, how can you shift your perspective on that barrier? How can you kind of take the reins and take it as an experience and an opportunity to learn something, something that you can take away with you? I genuinely want to learn this language. I don't want it to be a barrier. And I also know that I'm not going to get out there and be like, like it's my native language, because it's not. It takes practice. It takes getting it wrong. It takes feeling a little silly. It takes kind of, oh, I knew that word and now I need it and I can't recall it, and this sucks. This moments that you're going to have, and still navigating through that because you know that there's something more important on the other side of that. And that has been the approach to language. And then having my spouse with me and my family here, how can we all support each other on this journey, because we're all at different levels and we all have the same goal of being able to communicate in the native language of where we are. And yes, I have a foundation for Spanish. And if I went someplace where I had no foundation, I would approach it. And I'm saying this, in hindsight, most likely I would approach it what are some key phrases, right, that I want to know in conversation? How do they say hello? How do they say, I need help? How do you say, I'm learning this language, please be patient with me, or something like that, right? In that language. How do we make our food list in that language? And so I think I would approach it the same way, but I would feel way more fish out of water than I do in a Spanish speaking country, just because I at least have familiarity with speaking a little bit and also hearing it. Growing up in New York, like it was just around. The language was around in a way that I can like grab onto. So I think we can't overthink it. Can't be afraid to get it wrong, because that's how we get it right. That's how I'm approaching the language barrier. To all my friends and family, if you're listening, who are like, but the Spanish though, we're making it happen. We have done logistical things. We got in an apartment. We, went to talk about the bank account, even though, like I said in another video, that didn't go as planned. But we went there, like serious business. We went and troubleshot an issue that we were having with our SIM card when we first got here. We went and had to set up a local phone number when we got here. All of that required us to pull on our Spanish and, okay, a translation app, whatever your preferred translation app is, because sometimes you just need that, right? Sometimes you get them to talk into it and you're like, oh, okay, because I really didn't get a lot of that. And this is an important situation. So, yeah, I think this hopefully helps us rethink what we think are barriers and what is stopping us from doing something, achieving something, because, we don't like feeling like the fish out of water. We don't like feeling like the one who's coming in and has to figure it out. Um, but that's part of this journey, and I feel like that's part of a life journey in different ways. And so in what ways are you having to figure out something that maybe you hadn't had to figure out before? Like, when you get married, you got to figure that out. You get in a relationship, you move in together, you got to figure that out. How are we gonna navigate your stuff and my stuff each other? Like, how are we gonna do that? And how are we going to figure out what works for us and who sleeps on what side of the bed and where we're gonna, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, all those things. Become a parent, there's no manual. You have to figure out, okay, how do we keep this child going? This baby, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And we figure it out. And any big change, any shift that you are embarking upon, you will figure it out. And that has had to be the mindset in this journey that I've had to take and that we've had to take. And I think I feel that it's going to accelerate my growth because of the decision we made, because of where we are, because in our own personal lives, because we're open and we're ready to receive the newness and the differences. And we're still figuring that out. We're still figuring out how to simplify our lives. We're still figuring out how to do things differently than we used to do them, because the familiar, it becomes a habit. And now we're forming new habits. So, yeah, that's what I've got for you today. I don't really know. Um, Hopefully, something that I said is a takeaway that landed. I don't really. At one point, I was like, "Where am I going with this?" Um, I feel like I knew, and then conversations sometimes take you to another place. But hopefully, you were able to glean something from this. If something did resonate with you, I'd love to hear what it was in the comments below. Please and thank you. If you like this video and you found this helpful, please hit that like button. If you're feeling the vibe here, and where's here? What's here? I'm Imani Aisha. I make videos for us to be able to feel motivated and inspired and navigate through the inevitable changes and challenges that life will bring us and still feel good in our relationships, our relationship with self and our relationship with our partners and our family dynamic. And that's the approach I take, a very relational approach to changes, transitions, challenges, because it's life and we all deal with them, right? And I'm taking you on the journey with me as we are getting settled abroad as a family of four and looking at how it affects my relationship with self, my relationship with my partner, and our family dynamic. And so, if that sounds good and you want to come along for this ride on this journey, please hit that subscribe button. And if you know somebody that, like, hey, they would like this video, then hit that share button and send it in a group chat, send it to a text message, put it in their WhatsApp if that's how they roll. But yeah, that is what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, especially if you've listened all the way to the end. I appreciate you. Every like, every comment, every view on this journey, because this journey is new for me too. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I'm going to see you on the flip side, aka tomorrow.